right before the satsanga began, we were discussing this actually, about how this is what we tend to do with the live streams, what is called exegetical analysis. What in the last live stream I explained is understood by this unique Sanskrit word, mimamsa. Mimamsa means quite literally exegetical analysis. And this is in actuality what both the schools of Purva Mimamsa do, as well as Vedanta. They both do exegetical analysis. Indeed, if you look at the main scriptures of both of these schools, that is Purva Mimamsa Sutras and the Brahma Sutras, in actuality, that's what they're doing, is commenting on these scriptures. In the case of Purva Mimamsa, Jaimini is commenting on what is called the Shruti literature, and that is the beginning parts of the Shruti literature. That is the Samhitas, the Brahmanas, and the Aranyakas. But then in the Brahma Sutras, very specifically, Vyasadeva is commenting on the latter part of the Shruti literature, and that means the Upanishads. But in both cases, this is what they are doing, is exegetical analysis. They are looking at the scriptures and explicating them. They're explaining exactly what the scriptures mean. So it's always been something very interesting to me that so many people, again, I've been on this path for over 50 years, and I've seen all sorts of gurus, fake gurus, Swamijis, this person, that person, the other person, come and go, come and go, come and go, like the tides of the ocean. They're here 1 second, gone the next second. But so many of them will drone on about Vedanta this, Vedanta that, Vedanta, 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 Vedanta. I've had people speak about the silliest things and call it Vedanta. Some people will be a little bit more philosophical, and they'll actually drone on about some neo-Hinduism, some pseudo-philosophical ideas that maybe arose 150 years ago, and they'll call it Vedanta, etc. But very few people will correctly explain what Vedanta actually is. Is it the culmination of the Veda, the culmination of wisdom? Oh yes, yes indeed, that's how I've translated the very term Vedanta itself, the culmination of wisdom. But more than this, in practical application, i.e. in what is actually happening in these foundational sutras, it is exegetical analysis. That is, it is what should be done if a guru is a real guru. And what does that mean? They comment on, and not just comment on, not their own speculative commentary, not their own wishful thinking, not their philosophical chip on their shoulder that they must prove, they must prove, they must prove. No. In a legitimate and objective way that is guided by their own Atman and by Paramatman, by God himself, they will elucidate, bring light to the natural purport that is there within the Vedic scriptures. That is what is done in Purva Mimamsa Sutras, that is what is done in Vedanta Sutras, and any real guru, any real Acharya from the past, and again, not 100 years ago, we're talking about the more ancient the better, that's what they do. That's what they do. There is no such thing as droning on and on for half of one's career as a so-called spiritual teacher, and maybe twice you mention some passing little half phrase from Bhagavad Gita. No. What it means to be a guru is that you spend the majority of your teaching time elucidating one or another aspect of what is called Veda-Shastra, the Vedic scriptures. So indeed, it's fascinating, it's always been fascinating to me, how when it comes to so-called Vedic philosophy, so many people who drone on and try to pretend that they're Vedic philosophers today, they don't do that. And yet, going back to the origins of Vedic philosophy, that was all they did, was exegetical analysis. You take the Vedic scriptures and you explain them philosophically. This is what it means to do philosophy Vedically. If an individual is not capable of doing this, indeed, if in their mind they think they're doing philosophy, but the most that they can do, if you're lucky, is drone on about the history of philosophy. So and so at this date in time wrote such and such a book and believed X thing. Oh, but then 200 years later, another philosopher arose by such and such name who lived at this time, wrote these 5 books, and said something to counter that person. And now let me drone on for the next 2 hours talking about the history of philosophy, comparing, contrasting, but never coming to Siddhanta. Conclusion. Anyone who has actually studied Vedic philosophy knows that word, Siddhanta. If you don't, then it's guaranteed you have not studied Vedic philosophy even a little bit. Because you find this in all schools of Vedic philosophy, this very important term, Siddhanta. What does that mean? The conclusion. And what is meant by the conclusion? Not just sequentially, not just even idea-wise, meaning that now philosophically you have come to the foundation of all things that pertain to what we call philosophy, real philosophy. And once having attained that Siddhanta, you stop there. There is nowhere else to go. Very few people today are capable of Siddhanta. So thus truly not just droning on because they read a bunch of history books and, oh, so-and-so philosopher said this, and this person said that, and the other person compared this to that, and on and on and on, droning on, leading nowhere. Unless there is indeed Siddhanta, unless you come to a conclusion, a solid foundation upon which you can now build this edifice of understanding, and no, not just understanding, but a practice. And no, not even just a practice, but coming to that end point of why philosophy, in the true sense of that term, even exists. Why does philosophy even exist? Why does religion even exist? Why does the so-called spiritual even exist? I say so-called, meaning whatever form of quote-unquote spiritual you want to claim it is. Why do these things even exist? They exist for really one thing, and that is liberation. Absolute existential freedom. That means knowing who and what we truly are within. That means doing the most difficult thing in all of creation for a living being, and especially a human being. Climbing Mount Everest is easy compared to what I'm about to say. Becoming a brain surgeon is easy compared to what I'm about to say. Becoming a billionaire by 30 is easy compared to what I'm about to say. And that is coming to that point spiritually in which you are no longer, even in the minutest way, even in the subtlest way, lying to yourself anymore. Being freed from all illusion, self-imposed illusion, that is the most difficult of things. And why does philosophy, religion, spirituality exist? Such that you will stop lying to yourself and embrace who and what you truly are within spiritually. That is Atman, pure consciousness. And more, stopping there? No, not stopping there. Going even further. And understanding that which is the self of yourself, that which is the foundation of even your Atman, what in the Sanskrit literature, throughout the totality of the Upanishads, and throughout the Vedic scriptures, from the Puranas to the Mahabharata, and on and on and on, is called Paramatman, God. Unless you have come to the point where you have stopped your droning on and on about history of philosophy, theory of philosophy, and you have come to the point of realization within of who you are, and without lies, and even infinitely greater than that, that which is the soul of your soul, that is God, Paramatman. Unless you have come to that, you've wasted your life reading 100,000 philosophy books. Oh, 100,000 philosophy books, if you are sincere and if your goal is indeed to achieve such liberation, is a good thing. That's a good thing. Everything that can help you to achieve that goal is good. But ultimately, you must achieve that goal. Ultimately, you must come to that point where you have left behind all self-illusion and delusion and all egotism, including how much I think I know this and I know that, and blah, 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 blah. If you cannot do this most difficult of all things, then everything is for naught. What is that most difficult of all things? Prapatti, to surrender yourself in honesty, in humility, in full trust, in full faith, in full love. Surrender yourself at the feet of God without reservation in such a way that you say and you mean it throughout every layer of your being. You mean it. God, I am here for one thing and only one thing, and that is to serve you. I do not care what your order is for me. I will fulfill it or die trying. Unless one comes to that point, nothing else matters. This is the goal of Vedic philosophy. It's not just to sit there and think 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 and think. Trust me, any Vedic philosopher of the past, meaning a Jaimini, meaning a Vyasa, meaning a Narada Muni, meaning one of these truly great rishis, can outthink 100,000 of the greatest minds of today into the dust. Trust me. You could have one of these Vedic rishis on one hand, have 100,000 of the greatest minds today, have them sit facing each other and have a debate. Within 10 minutes, those 100,000 greatest minds of today will just fall into dust. And yet that greatest Vedic rishi at the end of it will say to you, oh yes, I have defeated them. And me? I am nothing. I am merely a servant of Bhagavan. I am merely here to do his will. And unless you know that, then you've wasted your life. And that one great rishi, having defeated that 100,000 greatest minds of today, would afterwards go to them in their defeat, in their shame, and say, don't despair. Don't despair. Understand God loves you. Just stop trying to think your way to him. Just surrender to him. And then you'll know him. Love God, because God infinitely loves you. That's what it's about. That's what it means to be a Vedic philosopher. That's what it means to be a Vedic sage.